Hello, let's talk about meetings. This is session 4, fifth video of our office manager coaching program. And I'd like to talk today about meetings and when to do them, when not to do them, why we don't need to do them all the time. And this is important as a manager to only do meetings when necessary. Let's start by talking about the problems with meetings. The problems with meetings, the top problem, number one problem, is most of the time the people in them don't want to be in them, right? Including the people who set them up most of the time. Maybe the guy who's leading it wants to be there because he likes talking in front of everybody. I mean, sometimes I'm that guy, right? I do set up the meetings. I plan them, I get them ready, and when we gather to meet, I go over things as much as I can, and I try to cover everything with everybody. And sometimes I even get carried away with like my inspirational talk where I want to cover the why behind everything that we're doing. And I think it's important to remember that most of the time, people would rather do than listen or talk about. And so meetings, they're an inevitable, unavoidable part of doing the work that we do, of being in part of business. They're just inevitable. Meetings will happen. But it's important to be careful with your meetings. Do them the right way. Don't do them more often than necessary. A lot of times meetings give space for people to just overdo it with whatever it is you're having to talk about. So think about a problem you need to face in your business, in your clinic, whatever. What you need are answers. You need to figure out what caused the problem, figure out what your procedures or policies say about the things around what that problem was, and then you need to establish how those procedures or policies, either number one, how you use those to solve the problem, or number two, what you need to create and add to your policies and procedures so that you can solve that problem in the future. And then you need to figure out what happened to make that problem happen in the first place, to hopefully keep it from happening. So normally when you're doing meetings, you're planning things or you're reacting to things that are happening. And either way, you just need the key aspects. You need to know what it is. You need to know what we do about that typically. What do we need to do about it in this situation? And how in the future can we do it better, right? And that's really, really simplifying it, but that's the basics. A lot of that stuff can be done in other ways, right? A lot of that stuff can be done in other avenues. The whole joke is I hate meetings that should have been an email, or walking out of a meeting and thinking this should have been an email. I remember watching some of the Marvel television shows and thinking this should not have been 10 hours of television content. It should have been 2 hours of a movie instead, because things get so bogged down in the little things, the details of the storytelling and things that the actual plot and what you need to know to walk out of there feeling fulfilled, it gets lost in all of that. And that happens in our meetings, doesn't it? Everything gets lost. What were we even talking about? So limiting your meetings only when necessary to avoid all of those problems that we run into. It's important because we need to save time for actually doing the work. It's way less important to know what you have to do than it is to actually do it, right? So we need to know what's happening so that we can solve the problems. We need to know the steps that we're supposed to be taking to solve the problems. Of course we are. Of course we do. But we can't spend so much time in meetings that we are not doing it. I worked for a little while with insurance company, and I worked in mostly recruiting, but I was involved in some sales as well. I got my license and tried to help out with sales. And as I was going through the process, I realized that this company did so many. It was like a brokerage company, right? That had you could reach out to multiple different insurance companies to try to figure out which one would be the one that you want to apply for your client. But they had so many meetings, and they were all Zoom meetings because we were all over the country, the people who worked for this. agency. We were all over the country. And so literally there were so many meetings that I found it hard to get the work done I had to do, because I had my team meeting with my team lead. Then I had the district meeting with the district lead every second day. And then once a week we had the meeting for the state. And then once every 2 weeks they had the like national meeting where everybody was on a Zoom call together. And then we had our accountability meetings with our partners. And then we had like, when am I actually selling insurance? And so being careful not to be meeting and getting together all the time to where everything you're doing is talking. All you're doing is talking about the problems, not solving any of them. And it's easy to get into that because it feels, you get that same sense of dopamine and serotonin from like just figuring out what needs to be done sometimes as you do from actually getting it done. Like, I know that happens to me. I walk out of a meeting where I feel like we made good progress and I feel just as good as if I had done all the stuff we just talked about. So, but now I actually have to do the stuff, right? So save time for doing the work, because most of the people don't want to be in the meetings. Most of them are thinking about what they got to go to do to get things done. I know for me, if I'm sitting in a meeting and someone else is talking about what needs to happen, I'm creating a checklist in my head of what extra work that means for me. So that means I'm going to have to do this, this, and this, and this because they brought up this one thing in the meeting that they want to happen, right? So save time for doing the work. Be careful not to over meet with your team. Use your communication channels. I talked about Slack or Discord or GroupMe or all the different communication, emails even. Sometimes I'll just say, the person who works for us who does external and internal marketing is really good about this, where I'll ask her a question about an upcoming event and she'll be like, I'm going to forward you that email. They sent me all the details. And I'm like, exactly. That's exactly what I need. I don't need to sit with you for 30 minutes to hash out everything that's going on. Just forward me the email they sent you, right? That's what I mean. Use those communication channels to get the information you need. We have something in our office that's a post-shift channel in Slack. So after a shift, if there's something that needs to be brought up, it gets brought up in there, and it's a message. It's not a meeting. It's not somebody coming in and sitting down in my office and going, hey, when we were doing this thing today, this happened, and I don't know how I should have handled it. Put it in post-shift. We can look at it. We can create a thread. We'll chat through it together, and we'll have it in writing. And sometimes I copy and paste that stuff into our wiki, and our policies and procedures are updated through our post-shift huddles, right? Instead of sitting down. And that's just a meeting people can just go in and text and message, just like text messaging. Of course, I tell my people, protect your time. Put yourself on snooze when you don't want to be getting messages. I don't even get notifications on my Slack. I go check Slack whenever I want to see things, when I'm thinking about it. I don't ever get notifications. So I'm basically offline on Slack if I'm not in the office. And if I'm working from home, I pull up Slack on my PC, but it doesn't ever notify me on my phone. So even I keep that rule for the team. I'm like, don't have Slack notifications if you don't want them. And if it's a channel you're not involved in, you can turn off notifications for that channel specifically. But use your communication channels to do things, to replace meetings. You're always going to have to get together to do meetings sometimes, right? A great example for us is our once a week meetings and trainings we do on Wednesdays. We did it today. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. We sat down and we met about a few things. We talk about the stats from the last time. We talk about what the announcements are, major things coming up. We do wins and learns. Everybody takes a little bit of time talking about how they're doing in their role and what they're excited about and what they think they need to learn moving forward, what they're working on right now. And then we transition into talking about what our training is going to be. And then we switch to role play. And I keep it to 30 minutes, the meeting part. And that gives us an hour and a half for role play. Now, here's what happens. My team inevitably goes to their pods to start role play training, and they start having their own little meetings. And so I'm always reminding my team leads, do not go get in another meeting. Leave this meeting and go train. If we need to have another meeting, fine. We could talk about what that needs to be, but this is training time. We have to do training. Use your meetings for meetings, your training for training, use your communication channels to try to help. Here's how we make our meetings the best they can be. Two big things. Number one is be ready. Have your shit together, right? You don't show up to a meeting without what having what you want to talk about ready. Your agenda is prepared. Now, I am a visual guy. So as you can see with these videos, I just put up simple slides. I like the imagery that makes me think of like this one. Be ready. I got a couple guys, boxers. They're training, they're practicing, they're preparing, right? I've got literally an image of the Slack logo on there because I like visual. So these things trigger me to be able to talk about the things that I know I need to talk about in these videos. I do the same thing for my meetings on Wednesdays and my meetings when we get together for our leadership team, right? Is I have something, whether it's notes or or slides, like an outline or slides, ready to go with my agenda so that I can go through it one thing at a time, and I don't linger. I go through it. I go through the things that I have on my list. I know I've got 9 slides I have to get through in 30 minutes, and so I'm not spending too much time. And I'm only asking for feedback on when it makes sense, right? But I'm ready. I've done the work. My stats are ready. I'm ready to tell them what we did last week in our numbers, or last month, or last quarter. I'm ready to tell them what our goals are. I do all that work ahead of time. I prep for the meeting. I don't sit down and go, guys, what's going on with you? What do we need to talk about today? Nope. We know what we're talking about. These are the announcements. This is what's happening. This is the stats. Here's what we're training on today. I hope everybody watched my video, and I do that too to save time with training. I make a training video every week that they watch and they learn, and it's kind of like this. It's like 8-9 minutes. They listen to me talk about what we're going to do over training. I don't use the meeting gathering time for that. They watch ahead of time. Part of me being ready. I have those ready before the end of Monday, so they have at least all day Tuesday and all morning Wednesday to watch that video. So be ready for your meetings. Know what your meetings are going to look like. It's also important, this is kind of a sub note, it's also important that your meetings are a little bit predictable in a good way, meaning they know what the layout is going to be, right? So when they show up to a meeting, when your team shows up to a meeting, or your leadership team, or even just you and your boss, or you and one of your team members, you're doing a check-in. When you're doing these meetings, it's important that they know, okay, when we get down, we're going to start off talking about the major projects we're working on, and then we're going to get into marketing conversation for just a few minutes. And then we're going to talk about the issues that we have that we're trying to work through and fix, where our delays are. And then we're going to finish with just a final little check-in on a couple of the main projects we've been working on and get an update on those. Like, whatever. Every single time you get together, you're ready because you know this is what you're going to be talking about. I have that in a template on our wiki. That's a private section that only I can see, and I always have that pulled up in front of me when I'm sitting in front of the team or my boss for a meeting, and we go through our list. Here's what I need to talk about. Here's what we need to do. I'm ready for those meetings. I have a whole time blocked the day before the meeting to get ready for that. Lastly, use your other team members. Let others lead in your meeting. I find that this really creates an amazing experience for your team versus just sitting and listening to you the whole time, right? So whenever you get comfortable with your team sharing their wins and learns, that's a great way to start. They're leading through their story. They're leading through sharing the testimony of the things that are great in the office, or something great that happened with a patient that they served. They're leading through that way. And allow others to lead. Sometimes we even have them do their own reports of their KPIs, right? Hey, tell me what's going on in your office, in your department, what you guys are working on, what do your numbers look like right now? What are you doing to make those better? What do you think is the reason that they are so good? You know, whatever the conversation is, they come prepared for that when they're told that they're going to need to do that. I find that it not only does it just put more people in front of the team instead of you, to where it gets boring to just listen to you yap the whole time, it also gives the team members up there doing it buy-in. It gives them a little bit more also of their credibility to the team who serve under them, right? Because they see they're having to get up here and talk about what I'm doing in my job and my performance. Oh man, they're talking so positively about the work I'm doing. They're speaking highly of me. They're praising me. Those things are huge, and they're critical and important. And one of the things in the Gallup poll, I talked about the survey that I give my team on the last video. One of the things in there is that employees or team members feel like they're being recognized for the good things they're done, their accomplishments, and that their boss or somebody at work wants them to do better, wants to help them improve. letting others lead gives them that feeling that, man, my boss is letting me like do part of this leadership of this meeting. If a stat or a special project you're working on leans really heavily on one department, let the head of that department share what's going on in the meeting, and then encourage them to let a couple of their team members share on the pieces of the project that they're working on and how it's going. Not only is that the accountability, because now they're going to have to share, in front of the whole class, but also it gives them that buy-in and that ability to feel like, man, they think highly enough of me to speak into this as if it's my own thing that I'm working on. You're going to get kickback possibly from people who are like, oh, I don't like talking in front of people, whatever, but it's just reporting on what's going on. You don't have to make them come up front and stand up. They can be sitting in a circle with everybody else. They can be sitting behind the desk or whatever and just talk. Make it whatever you have to do to make it comfortable, but let them help you lead these meetings. It's really useful and important. And so, yeah, overall, I say limit the meetings, be careful, only have them when necessary, and do the things that you can to make sure the work is prioritized, not meeting together. Thanks. We'll see you in the next one.